is free, and the revenge is already brewing. Let's start by laying out exactly what this man has been through, because to understand where Drew is going, you have to fully appreciate where he has been sitting, trapped, silent, completely aware for months. Drew was shot.
Twice.
Not in some ambiguous, could have been an accident way. He was deliberately shot by someone who wanted him out of the picture. Then, to make absolutely certain he stayed that way, he was chemically paralyzed. Injected with medication that locked him inside his own body while everyone around him believed he had suffered a stroke.
He could not speak.
He could not move with any real purpose. He could not tell a single soul what had been done to him or who had done it. But he could think. He could hear. He could watch. Every conversation that happened around him went into the mental file. Every slight, every decision made about his life, without his input, every person who looked at him with pity or relief or guilt, Drew cataloged all of it. For months. With nothing else to do but remember and plan. And now Geo has pulled him out of that lake, and the paralytic medication has been wearing off for weeks, and Drew is coming back to himself with a fury that has had months to sharpen itself into something very precise and very dangerous. Here's the thing about Drew that the people around him sometimes forget until it is too late. He is not someone who forgives easily on a good day. He is not someone who shrugs off being wronged and moves forward with grace. He carries things.
He acts on them.
And the things that have been done to him this time are not small. They are not misunderstandings. They are deliberate, calculated crimes committed by people who believed they could get away with it because he could not fight back. That calculation was wrong. And Drew is about to demonstrate exactly how wrong it was. Now here is where it gets truly fascinating from a storytelling perspective. The black box, the one containing evidence of Drew's own past financial misconduct, has made its way to Brennan, which means Brennan now holds the one card that could theoretically back Drew into a corner. The leverage that says, you expose what was done to you and we expose what you have done. You go after Willow and Nina, and you go to prison too. That is a real threat. Drew is not going to pretend it is not. He spent months locked in a wheelchair watching the world move around him, and he has no desire whatsoever to trade that experience for a cell at Pentonville. So the revenge he wants, the full, scorched earth exposure of everything Willow did, everything Nina did, every crime committed against his body and his freedom, may have to be redirected, shaped differently, aimed at targets where he has more room to maneuver. And Drew, being Drew, is already thinking about exactly how to do that. Consider the restraining orders. During the period when Drew was locked in and Willow was managing his affairs, those orders against Scout's extended family were quietly lifted. Drew had to sit there and watch Scout spend time with people he has serious problems with, the Quartermaines, Danny, unable to say a word about it. The moment he is back on his feet and legally himself again, reinstating those restrictions is absolutely on the table. It would not be revenge in the dramatic, public sense, but it would be control. It would be Drew reasserting his authority over his own life and his daughter's world. And for a man who has had zero control for months, that matters enormously. There is also the question of the living arrangement at Alexis's home, which Drew resented deeply even while he could not object to it. That situation is going to change. But here is the element of Drew's returning personality that should genuinely worry the people around him. He has a history of making accusations without having complete proof to back them up. There is a previous situation where Drew pointed a finger at Michael as the person who shot him, without solid evidence, but with complete willingness to go to the police with that claim anyway. If Drew is looking for a version of events about the lake that deflects from Nina and protects whatever deal he may ultimately make with Brennan, he is entirely capable of landing on a different story. A different name. Someone he wants to hurt anyway, conveniently positioned as the villain of a story he is actively rewriting. Tracy should probably be watching her back. Danny, who Drew already has complicated feelings about, could end up in the crosshairs too. Drew is not going to sit quietly and absorb what was done to him. He is going to move. Loudly, strategically, and with the full weight of months of stored-up fury behind every single step. Poor Charles has faced a lot of threats over the years. But a Drew who has been waiting this long, this quietly, with this much reason to be angry, that is something new. That is something nobody in this town is fully prepared for. Trina has a stalker, and the clues are getting stranger. Now let's talk about Trina, because this storyline is developing in that slow, creeping way that the best soap opera suspense always does, where each new detail does not answer the questions so much as make it more complicated and more unsettling. The bulletin board. That is where this conversation has to start, because the moment Port Charles and everyone watching at home saw that corkboard covered in photographs of Trina, the entire texture of her story changed. Someone has been collecting images of her, watching her, documenting her existence in a way that is obsessive and deliberate and deeply disturbing. And Trina, bright and talented and standing at the beginning of something genuinely exciting in her life, has absolutely no idea.
Now.
Who is it? The show has done something interesting here. It cut from Quinn, Kai's old friend who recently reappeared and made a point of apologizing to Trina, directly to that bulletin board. That is a very deliberate editorial choice. The camera does not lie. Except on a soap opera, the camera absolutely lies when the writers want it to. That kind of obvious visual connection is exactly the sort of misdirection that General Hospital loves to use when the actual answer is somewhere else entirely. Quinn is too obvious. The show is working too hard to point at him, which in soap opera logic means the moment you're most convinced it is Quinn is probably the moment the truth arrives, and it is someone completely different. So then there is Simon, the music executive who signed Trina and Gio, and who has been behaving in ways that are harder to read. His phone conversation, the one where he told an unknown person that Trina was the one to watch, landed with that particular kind of eerie musical underscore that this show uses when it wants you to notice something without being completely certain what you noticed. Simon does not carry himself like the obvious threat. He seems professional, focused, connected to the music industry world in ways that feel legitimate. But the history of this genre is full of characters who seemed perfectly reasonable right up until the moment they were revealed to be anything but. And then there are the wilder theories floating around the fan community, because soap opera audiences are creative and passionate, and they do not limit themselves to the obvious suspects. Could Esme have survived? The circumstances of her disappearance were dramatic and watery, and unresolved in the way that soap opera deaths often are when a character might be needed again later. But if Esme came back, her focus would almost certainly be on her son, Ace, rather than on Trina. That particular thread does not quite pull in the right direction for this stalker story. What about Spencer? Now here is the one that is going to make a certain segment of the audience sit up very straight. Spencer's situation was also left in a dramatically ambiguous place. And the history between Spencer and Trina is one of the most emotionally complex and beloved relationships this show has developed in years. The fans who have been rooting for them, and there are many, would never want Spencer to come back as a villain. But what if whatever happened to him left him changed in a specific way? What if the feelings he had for Trina became something twisted in the aftermath of trauma? That is a dark road. But soap operas have walked darker ones. The more hopeful version of that scenario, and perhaps the one the writers are genuinely building toward, is that Spencer eventually gets help, gets his bearings back, and re-enters Trina's life at a point when she is navigating whatever is developing with Kai and Gio professionally. A triangle there, with Spencer healthy and present and fighting for her properly, would be exactly the kind of story that rewards the viewers who have been patient. But right now, in the immediate present, Trina has someone watching her. Someone who has gone to the trouble of building a visual record of her life that she knows nothing about. And the new arrival coming to town, Hudson, that mysterious business executive with the unspoken agenda, is connected to enough existing threads that his role in this stalker story cannot be ruled out. The music is getting louder. The camera is watching Trina more carefully. And whoever is behind that bulletin board is still out there, still collecting, still waiting for whatever they are planning to do next. Maxie's house is empty and Port Charles is asking who moves in next. And finally, let us talk about something that sounds simple on the surface, but is actually a deeply satisfying puzzle for anyone who loves thinking about how this town fits together, because when a family leaves Port Charles and a house becomes available, the question of who fills that space always tells you something about where the story is heading next. Maxie and Spinelli are gone. The whole family, All of them, the children included, have packed up and followed a new opportunity to Australia. And the house they left behind is sitting there, full of history and memories and the particular kind of emotional weight that Port Charles properties accumulate over years of stories told within their walls. This was not always Maxie's house. Before it was hers, it belonged to Lulu and Dante. After Lulu's coma changed everything about that chapter of their lives, the house eventually passed to Maxie through a rental arrangement.